Welcome to JustWannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. I'm a law professor, and I just want to quilt.
Today, I'm chatting with Emma Connolly. She is the owner of Uptown Needle and Craftworks, which is not just a quilting shop, but a craft and sewing shop with free open sessions Monday through Thursday, all day. So you can come in and be working on a project, and they'll help you, and it's awesome. Emma is amazing. I love her shop. I love the feel of it. It's where Gigi works. I try to get there at least, I don't know, if I can, once a week, if that's possible, just to say hi. It's that kind of shop. I hope you enjoy this interview.
Okay.
All right. Very good.
All right. So tell me who you are and tell me where we are.
Okay. My name is Emma Connolly, and we are at Uptown Needle and Craftworks at 4610 Magazine Street.
Awesome. And you are the owner of the shop?
Yes, I am.
And tell me, before we begin talking about the shop, tell me about your first memory of quilting or sewing.
I think my first memory of quilting was when I was about 6 years old. My grandmother, both of my grandmothers were sewists, and my paternal grandmother had a treadle sewing machine. And my first memory of sewing was I was crawling around under the sewing machine, and I would push the treadle, and I would watch her foot go up and down. And I would open the little drawers on each side and pull things out. And she was so frustrated with me that she said, "Emma, I think it's time you learned how to sew." So she taught me how to sew at that age, 6 or 7 years old. And the first thing I did was run the needle through my finger in that old Singer sewing machine. And after that, nothing else scared me at all. I was ready to sew.
It made you brave.
I think so. It made me remember that nothing is unfixable. So my finger healed pretty quickly.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And then did you sew when you were child and teenager? When did you start sewing?
I did. My neighbors, when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, my neighbors, there was a little garage apartment next door, and there was a couple living there. And they had a baby, and I went over, and I was just fascinated with the little baby. And so I made the baby some little jackets and things, hand-stitched out of some old sheets that we had, because they didn't have very much. So I was trying to help them out, and she acted like she appreciated it, but it was probably very tacky baby garment, hand-stitched out of an old sheet. She acted like she liked it. So I did that, and then when I was in high school, I made almost all of my clothing. I made homecoming dresses for myself and a couple of friends, and I had this little home business going that if my brothers needed something hemmed, I would charge them 25 cents to hem their pants.
That's really great. That's great. And so what about quilting? Did you take up quilting? Do you like quilting, and when did you take it up?
I do. I'm not what you would call a traditional quilter. My idea of quilting is to take and reuse whatever you have, and that's how my grandmother quilted. She made quilts out of flour sacks and anything else. I know when she would save clothing and cut all the buttons and zippers out and reuse them and save the clothing and make quilts out of it. And that's what she did in her day, and that's the quilting that I learned. And she didn't have a quilt frame. She had a little frame that fit in her lap. It was a little oval frame. She didn't have one of the big ones. It was a small oval frame, and she would hand quilt her quilts in her lap, and that's what she taught me to do.
It's really cool. Do you still do hand quilting, or do you prefer machine quilting?
I do. I enjoy hand quilting.
It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And any particular style of quilts you like to make?
I like to do crazy quilts, where you can do embroidery stitches. more improvisational and art quilts.
That's really interesting. And you, we'll talk about the shop. You also just do all kinds of interesting, like you're incredibly creative and make all kinds of things, right? The little houses that you were working on. We had a class here and you were making houses. So for you, creativity is beyond just the quilting, right? Do you see it as, I mean, your shop reflects that. So your shop isn't just for quilting. It's all kinds of crafts. It's this incredibly like magical space of every little corner has something different and interesting. And that reflects who you are.
Right. It does. I was clergy for a long time, and Episcopal clergy, and my skill set was in outreach and pastoral care. And as I worked with our patients, people that were perhaps they were terminally ill, going through a divorce, had a kid on drugs, or whatever it was, if I could sit with them and work with them and get them doing something with their hands, whether it was stitching, creative writing, embroidery, painting, whatever it was, it would get their minds off of whatever the trauma or anxiety producing issue was in their family or in their life, and give them a little comfort. And I wanted to do that for a long time as my living. So
that's really interesting. My other life, we have many lives, right? So one of the lives I had was I did PhD work in the culture of catastrophe, and World War I, World War II, all of that, and how people express their trauma, and so through painting, writing, and so it's really interesting that's a sort of healing, right? Yeah. And then I did a field trip to the one center that was a PTSD center for women, and they were quilting and sewing and painting, and it was really interesting.
Part of my outreach work and doing my church work was I did writing groups and sewing groups with women who lived in shelters in Jackson, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee. And it always amazed me how you get a group of women together, and maybe they don't know each other, and you get them doing the same thing, and they start looking at each other's work and admiring each other's work, and it opens up doors to whatever's going on in their lives, and they start talking about that. So
it's really interesting, isn't it? You create that environment here, because I was kind of amazed. We had the 2-day workshop on the G's Bend, and some people knew each other, others didn't, but it felt like community almost instantly, which is really I've been to other classes where that just didn't happen, right? So it's a gift, and it was really such a magical. I keep using the word magical, but it is. It's like something special about getting people together to do work.
It's a sanctuary here. That's the way that I like to think of it, anyway. And I hope that whoever walks in here feels that way as well, and that they know that everyone is welcome, no matter what skill level they are in anything. They can come in and they can learn to do something, and they can learn to really enjoy handwork, doing something.
Yeah, it's so I came in to make a jacket because I didn't know how to make anything practical, and it was, again, this great experience. I felt like I could do it. There was encouragement. You have this open sewing sessions that really allow people to get a new skill, and I think in some way take that place of the grandmother or the families that might pass things down. It becomes kind of it feels very family space kind of feeling.
I think probably my generation, and I'm 68, and my generation and the generation before mine even was probably the last generation that had the ancestors living with them. Yeah. Nowadays, everybody goes to retirement villages or personal care homes or somewhere, or they live independently. They don't live with their children most of the time, and you don't have that intergenerational learning as much today as you did in the generations past. And we have several women who come in here. Perhaps they're grandmothers, and they want to bring their grandchildren in here, and they come in here and they work with their grandchildren. We had a woman and child this morning taking the mermaid doll class, and each one of them made the mermaid doll class. But the grandmother was working with the granddaughter, and she said, we couldn't do this at my house.
Why?
I don't know. She said we had to come here to do it, so I don't know why
That's
that was.
really interesting. That makes it, but it is a really nice space, and a lot of the shop is like New Orleans, long and skinny, right? Because
it's a shotgun.
It's a shotgun, and a lot of space is devoted to the workshop area, the classroom area.
Probably half the shop is classroom and workshop area. Yeah.
So how important we know on community side that matters, but on the business side, what role do classes play in terms of the shop?
The classes and workshops that we offer here are actually our main revenue stream. Quilt shops, I don't think, can make it anymore with just selling fabric. You have to offer what to do with it. What are the things that I can do with a yard of fabric? And you show me a yard of fabric, I can show you 50 things you can do with it.
Right.
So it's more than just selling fabric and thread. It's building a community here, and we do that through our workshops and classes.
And do you find that the workshop and classes, the fees for the classes, or the fact that you've brought them in so that they buy things in the shop, or is it both?
It's both. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Right.
And then in terms of the teachers, are the teachers the people that work at the shop, or are you paying teachers? Like, how does the economics of the teachers work exactly?
I teach the majority of the classes here. Gigi, Kate, the rest of them, people who work here also teach classes. That's just part of what we do, because anyone who works here must know how to do some type of craft, and they must love it, because you can't teach something unless you like it.
Yeah.
So they all do. And we have some people who come in some customers who come in who perhaps they'll take a class in quilting, but say maybe they do heirloom sewing and they want to teach smocking. So we have customers who teach classes here as well.
Interesting. And then they do that voluntarily? Is it just for
No, they get paid.
They get paid. Oh, that's amazing.
I can't believe they get paid for it, but they do.
That's funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, your shop is, so we have, how many shops do we have in New Orleans right now? We have four shops, right? We have four?
I think so.
We have four shops. And each one is different. Each one is really different. Tell me, when you were designing, how old is your shop now?
We've been here a little over 3 years.
Amazing.
I know.
And so when you were designing your shop, what were you thinking about? How, and you're also on Magazine, which is one of the biggest tourist it's like the place to go in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So, and you have a great shop spot between the bead shop and the bakery. So,
yeah, yes.
It's very good. But tell me what you were thinking about because you were starting from scratch when you created this, right?
I wanted to do it for a long time. As I said, in my clergy days, I had enjoyed teaching various things, anything from creative writing to embroidery and so forth. And I wanted to do that with a storefront and sell the supplies that we did the workshops and classes in. So that's what we do here. But I did a market study on my own of what was available here up on this section of Magazine, and there was nothing. The other quilt shops were pretty far away from here, and there was nothing uptown. There used to be a quilt shop uptown years and years ago, and it closed, and so I had been there, so I knew there was nothing here. I went to the competition and looked to see, and I don't like that word competition. I like to support any local business, and I like to collaborate with other quilt shops, and we help each other. I send people all the time to the other quilt shops in town if I don't have what they're looking for. So we do work with each other. But I looked at the type of fabrics that they had, and I didn't want to be in competition with them. So I wanted to have something unique. So I wanted to have some more fabrics for modern quilters, some Day of the Dead stuff, and some different things that you're not going to find at the other quilt shops or at some of the national big box stores, I
Right.
guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we did at first